Narrative podcasting is dead. It's dramatic, isn't it? Yes. It's in fact an article that I read the other day that narrative podcasting is essentially dead. Nobody wants to make them anymore because they're too expensive. They take too long to make. And as I read this article that was written online about narrative podcasting being dead, I sort of was reading it and I was feeling very depressed as I was reading it because obviously narrative podcasting is what I do. There's pretty much, 90% of what I do is narrative podcasting. 1 Minute Remaining is a narrative podcast. So if you're unfamiliar with what a narrative podcast is, most of you will likely be aware of shows like Serial. Serial with Adnan Saeed, basically the birth, really, I suppose, of the true crime podcast as we know it. That is a narrative podcast. If you've ever listened to most podcasts by Gimlet Media, the startup, if you haven't listened to Startup, the very first season, it's incredible, narrative podcast. Gimlet Media was born based off the back of building narrative podcasts. This American Life, in a number of ways, it's a narrative podcast. There's a lot of narrative podcasts in the world. There have been a lot of narrative podcasts in the world. But what this article was saying was that essentially no companies are making them anymore. Now, they're talking about the large companies that have... So essentially, Gimlet Media, which was bought out for an exorbitant amount of money many years ago, has slowly just been moved to the wayside by Spotify. You've got Amazon, companies like that who are no longer investing the money and time into narrative podcasts. And that is all it is when they say it, because as you read this article, essentially that's what it's saying, is that these companies, these large organizations are not seeing the financial benefits in creating narrative podcasts. It doesn't mean that people don't want to listen to narrative podcasts. Narrative podcasting is still alive and well. People essentially love a story, and they love storytelling when it's done well and done properly. But if you were hoping that you could create a narrative podcast and maybe cash in with a big company coming in and giving you a whole heap of money for your podcast, if it's a narrative podcast, they're saying that ship has sailed. So if you're someone like me who enjoys creating narrative podcasts, don't ever see that headline and think, oh, well, that's it. I can't do a narrative podcast. I just need to do a two-hander podcast where it's just me, or just me and a guest, or just me and a friend doing a podcast. I'll just do that because, it's easier to sell. Companies will be more interested in it. And, if that's really what you want to do, then great, go for it. But if you truly love, and this is what I said when we're talking about choosing an idea, do something you want to do. Because at the end of the day, I have no interest really in doing any other podcasts apart from narrative podcasts. I do a two-handed show about dog training because I find that topic interesting. But other than that, my true passion is building narrative podcasting. I love the art of storytelling. I love the art of putting in the music and some sound effects and narration and building an entire episode. I get goosebumps. I literally, the other day, I finished up an episode and I listened to the end of it and I got shivers listening to it. Because I think it evokes emotion, sort of emotion that I really don't think any other style of podcasting or anything can do to people. It's such a, especially when it comes to podcasting, it's so intimate. The amount of people have messaged me and said, I was in tears. I had to stop walking, because I was crying at listening to this particular part of the story. And that's what it's all about. And that's why I will forever continue to create narrative podcasts when I'm doing podcasts. So if you're someone, who's come across an article or maybe someone saying that, which I did the other day, that narrative podcasting is dead, it's not. It's just that the big companies, and the other thing is that what happened was essentially, there was this massive explosion in podcasting at a certain time, and these narrative podcasts in particular were doing so well. The companies do what these large companies do, and that's they just went from 0 to 100 and just decided that they were going to just dump a whole heap of money into narrative podcasting because, they were being turned into TV shows or movies. They were being optioned into those sorts of things. So there was more money to be made there. But essentially what they did was they just overhired as well. So you had, you'd listen to some of these narrative podcasts after these companies bought it, and the credit rolls at the end were just insane. There was 10, 15, 20 people working on one podcast, and they're flying around the country and maybe going to other countries. And obviously with that comes expenses, travel, staying in places, and staff and time. And it takes time to build these things, but you can still create a narrative podcast. I mean, look at me. I create narrative podcasts as one person. I don't travel anywhere. but I still build what I believe are good narrative podcasts. So narrative podcasting is not dead. Big companies giving you a ton of cash to make narrative podcasting may be dead for now. You may see it come back at some point. But again, they just over-capitalize, as these companies do. They just went ape shit and just dumped money in it and saw no returns because they were putting way too much money into these things. So very short video just to try and, it's just because it was fresh top of mind, something I read the other day or a little while ago. And it sort of made me feel a bit depressed about the whole situation. And then when I kind of took a step back and really read what this article was talking about, I realized that, well, no, people still want that content. And I believe people will always want that content. It's the same as, Netflix documentaries. I mean, there will always be crime documentaries. There will always be just documentaries in general because people love to watch true stories and they love a narrative and they love to get involved and get lost in a story. And that's essentially what podcasting is. So, this is going, obviously taking us back to now when we're creating our idea, but going back to that, if you're trying to think about what you want to do and you're thinking, should I do a narrative podcast, or should I just find someone I can bounce off and just do a talk show type setup? Again, do what you want to do, not what you think people are going to, number one, want to listen to, and number two, what you think is going to make you the most money. But if that is your main focus, and I'm not saying you shouldn't focus on wanting to make a career out of this, because we all do. I mean, I'm assuming if you're watching this, you want to make a career out of it. Then obviously you've got to make money for it to be viable, but you can do that with whatever you're passionate about, because people, as long as you're passionate about it, other people will be passionate about it and they will listen. And then what happens once you've got listeners, you make money. So again, short video, just because it was top of mind. Just wanted to let you know, if you are thinking narrative podcasting, you've seen any of the articles that I've seen recently about the fact that narrative podcasting is dead. It is not dead. Not dead at all. So if you want to make narrative podcasts like I do, then just do it. That's all. Anyway, catch you on the next one.